In the heart of Nigeria's ancient lands, where the spirits of ancestors danced in the evening breeze and wisdom flowed like palm wine at festivals, stood the prosperous village of Umuafia. Here the Okonkwo family compound rose proudly, its walls telling stories of generations passed through the intricate carvings that adorned them. The compound was a masterpiece of traditional architecture, with three connected buildings forming a perfect U shape around a courtyard where life's daily drama unfolded beneath the watchful eyes of towering Iroko trees. Chief Olayinka Okonkwo, known simply as Papa, was a man whose presence commanded respect even in silence. His broad shoulders carried not just the weight of his family's name but also the responsibility of being one of the village's most respected elders. His first wife, Adanna, Mama, possessed the kind of beauty that grew more profound with age. Her face marked with tribal marks that spoke of royal lineage from a neighboring kingdom. Together they had been blessed with 8 children, each one as unique as the patterns on a butterfly's wings. Chinua, their first son, was 15, an age where childhood and adult responsibilities met like two rivers converging. The twins, Oluwasin and Chioma, came next, their arrival heralded by 7 days of celebration and 3 white goats sacrificed to thank the gods. Obinna, the 4th child, carried a gentleness that made even wild animals trust him. Aisha, their 5th, had inherited her mother's regal bearings and her father's fierce pride. Folami, the 6th, was known throughout the village for a voice that could make the birds stop to listen. Chidi, the 7th, still walked the line between childhood games and growing responsibilities. Finally, there was little Olayinka Jr., barely 5, whose laughter could light up the darkest corner of their compound. The family compound reflected their status in the village. The main building, with its imposing zinc roof that sang different songs for rain and sunshine, housed Papa and Mama's quarters. Here also stood the family shrine, where the ancestors were honored each morning with prayers and offerings of kola nut. The left wing belonged to the older children, while the right wing contained the kitchen, where 3 cooking hearths stayed warm for dawn to dusk, and the storage rooms where yams were stacked like sleeping warriors. The trouble began during the season of the early rains, when the air was thick with possibility and the scent of wet earth promised new beginnings. It started small, like the first drop of rain before a storm. Mama's coral beads, precious heirlooms that had witnessed 4 generations of marriages, vanished from their special wrapper one quiet afternoon. The beads were no ordinary ornaments. They had been blessed by the great Dibia of Arochukwu himself, said to bring fertility and favor to any woman who wore them. Their disappearance was like a knife to Mama's heart, and in the chaos that followed, all eyes turned to Chinua. The elders cannot sleep while the young ones take the blame. Papa's voice had thundered throughout the compound. It was a saying as old as the village itself, but in recent times it had become a heavy chain around Chinua's neck. The accusation struck Chinua like a physical blow. "I swear by the gods, I didn't take them," he had pleaded, his voice breaking. But in a household where age carried both privilege and burden, his protest fell on deaf ears. As the rainy season progressed, more items began to disappear. Papa's snuff box, passed down through 3 generations. Mama's special wrapper for important ceremonies. Even the small savings of cowrie shells that Chioma had been collecting for her upcoming celebration. With each loss, the shadow of suspicion over Chinua grew darker. His siblings began to change around him. The twins, once his closest allies in childhood games, now clutched their possessions tightly when he passed by. Obinna, who used to seek his advice on everything, began distant. Even little Olayinka Jr. learned to guard his toys with suspicious eyes. The punishment came regularly now. Sometimes it was the cane whistling through the air with brutal precision. Other times it was denial of meals or extra chores that left his hands raw and his back aching. But worse than any physical punishment was the isolation. The way the family he loved began to treat him like a stranger in his own home. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Chinua sat alone behind the compound, his back against the rough bark of an udala tree. This had become his refuge, the one place where he could let his tears fall without shame. As he sat there, Aisha, his younger sister, approached cautiously. "Brother," she said softly, "I saw something today." She hesitated, twisting the edge of her wrapper between nervous fingers. "I saw Fulani take something from Mama's box, but I was afraid to say anything." Chinua felt his heart twist. Here was proof of his innocence, yet he knew that Aisha's word alone wouldn't be enough to clear his name. The weight of being the eldest child, once a source of pride, had become a burden too heavy to bear. The final straw came during the preparation for the New Yam Festival. Papa's ceremonial cap, adorned with eagle feathers that marked his position as a titled man, disappeared on the very morning it was needed for the rituals. The timing couldn't have been worse. The entire village would be gathering, and Papa's absence from the ceremony would bring shame to the family name. The compound erupted into chaos. Papa's rage was like thunder, his voice carrying across the compound and drawing curious neighbors to their walls. Mama's tears fell silently and heavy, each one a testament to her devastation. And once again, all eyes turned to Chinua. "I didn't take it. I swear by all our ancestors," Chinua pleaded, with his voice raw with desperation. "Please, you must believe me this time." But Papa had reached his limit. Raising his hand to the sky, he made a solemn oath. "By sunrise tomorrow, this cause of theft in my household must end. If I must visit every dibia in 7 villages, if I must spend my last kobo, I will find a way to expose the truth." That evening, Papa called an emergency meeting with the village elders. They gathered under the ancient Iroko tree, their faces grey with the flickering light of palm oil lamps. The air was heavy with the smoke of pipes and the weight of unspoken concerns. The eldest amongst them, Baba Okafor, whose white hair glowed like a crown in the lamplight, spoke first. In my many years, I have seen how a small light can grow until it poisons an entire family. Perhaps what you need is not more punishment, but a way to find the truth itself. Another elder, famous for his knowledge of ancient remedies, leaned forward. I have heard whispers, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, of a drum, not just any drum, but one blessed by the greatest dibias of our land. They say it speaks with the voice of truth itself, revealing all that is hidden. The other elders murmured in recognition. Some had heard of this mysterious drum, passed down through generations of truth seekers. It was said to be kept by a powerful Babalawo who lived beyond the 7 rivers, in a place where the forest held its deepest secret. Word of Baba's plan spread through the compound like wildfire. That night, an unusual quietness fell over the household. Each family member retreated to their own thoughts, their own fears of what truth such a drum might reveal. In the children's quarters, whispered conversations continued late into the night. Some spoke of running away before their secrets could be exposed. Others wondered if such a drum could really exist, and if it did, what other truth it might reveal beyond just the missing items. Chinua lay awake on his mat, with his heart pounding with equal measures of fear and hope. Could this mysterious drum finally clear his name? Could it restore his family's trust in him? Or would it reveal darker secret that none of them were prepared to face? As the moon climbed higher in the sky, casting silver shadows through the compound, the weight of impending change hung heavy in the air. Tomorrow, Papa will begin his journey to find the truth-telling drum, and nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. Far off in the distance, a night bird called 3 times, and omened that the ancestors were watching, waiting to see how this tale of truth and redemption would unfold in the days to come. Papa's journey began before the first cocks crow, when the morning star still hung like a lantern in the dark sky. He carried only what was necessary: a staff carved from Ogili's wood, a bag of sacred colored nuts for offerings, and enough cowries to make the necessary sacrifices. Around his neck hung a charm given to him by his village dibia, a small leather pouch containing herbs to protect him on his journey. The path to finding the sacred drum would take him through 7 rivers, each representing a test he must pass. The eldest had warned him that each crossing would demand not just physical strength but spiritual readiness. As he set out, the compound stirred with quiet prayers, even those with guilty consciences hoping for his safe return. His first stop was the great Nkwo market, where traders from 9 villages gathered. Here, amid stalls selling everything from bitter leaf to bronze anklets, he sought out Mama Ezine, the ancient priestess who had seen 100 harvests. Her stall sat at the edge of the market, marked by hanging bunches of dried herbs and feathers that danced in the breeze. "Ah, Olayinka," she greeted him, her milky eyes somehow seeing straight through to his soul. "You seek the drum of truth, the Igba Eju. But are you prepared for its cost? Truth is like palm wine, sweet to see but bitter when taken in large quantities." The journey led Papa through forests where spirits whispered in the rustling leaves and across plains where the sun beat down like a blacksmith's hammer. At each river crossing, he encountered a guardian who demanded a different price for passage. At the first river, he met an old woman grinding pepper with a golden mortar. She spoke in riddles. What is heavier, a bag of lies or a feather of truth? Papa sat with her until sunset, sharing stories of his family's troubles until she nodded in satisfaction and showed him the hidden stepping stones across the river. The second guardian was a young boy who appeared to be no older than Olayinka Jr., yet his eyes held ancient wisdom. He challenged Papa to a game of Ayo, saying that only those who could see patterns in chaos were worthy of finding the drum. They played from moonrise to moonset until Papa finally understood that winning was not the goal. It was seeing the truth in every move. The third and most fearsome guardian was a masquerade spirit, its raffia skirt swirling like flames as it danced at the river's edge. It demanded that Papa perform the dance of his ancestors, not just the steps but the meaning behind each movement. As Papa danced, he felt the weight of generations moving through his body, understanding finally that truth was not just in words but in the very rhythm of life itself. After 7 days of travel, Papa finally reached the sacred grove where the keeper of the drum dwelt. The air here was different, thick with the scent of herbs and the weight of ancient magic. Butterflies with wings like stained glass fluttered between trees that had witnessed centuries of cycles. The Babalawo's hut seemed to grow from the earth itself, its walls covered in symbols that moved when viewed from the corner of the eye. Cowrie shells hung in curtains around the doorways, clicking together in rhythms that matched the beating of Papa's heart. Babalawo Oludare emerged from his hut like a spirit stepping through the veil between worlds. His white hair formed a cloud around his head, and his staff, decorated with bells and cowries, sang with each step he took. "I have been expecting you, Olayinka of Umuofia," the Babalawo said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The drum has been restless these past 7 nights, speaking your name in its dreams." Inside the Babalawo's heart, shadows danced on walls lined with calabashes of every size. The air was thick with the smoke of sacred herbs, and in the center, on a platform of carved Iroko wood, sat the Igba Eju, the drum of truth. It was smaller than Papa had imagined, yet its presence filled the space like smoke. Its surface was dark as night, polished to a sheen that reflected like still water. Carved into its skin were symbols older than language. The sun, the moon, mask of truth, and deception, and patterns that seemed to shift and change as Papa watched. The drum chooses its keeper, Oludare explained, circling the platform. He has been waiting for one whose heart carries both justice and mercy. But know this, its power comes with a price. Once truth begins to speak, it cannot be silenced. Are you prepared for what it might reveal? Not just about others, but about yourself. Papa thought of Chinua, of the tears he had seen his son try to hide, of the trust that had been broken in his family. I am ready, he said, his voice firm. Whatever the price, it cannot be heavier than the cost of living with lies. The journey home was harder than the journey out. For now, Papa carried not just the physical weight of the drum, but the spiritual responsibility it represented. At each village he passed through, people emerged from their compounds to stir at the drum, some making signs to words of evil, others throwing blessed chalk dust in its path for perfection. The drum seemed to grow heavier with each step, as if gathering the weight of all the untold truths it would soon reveal. Sometimes in the night, Papa would hear a humming softly, speaking in a language older than words. As he neared Umuafia, the air grew thick with anticipation. Word of his approach had spread ahead of him, carried by traders and travelers who had seen him on the road. The village buzzed with speculation about the drum's powers and what truth it might reveal. When Papa finally reached the compound, the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of fire and gold. The entire family gathered in the courtyard, drawn by some power they couldn't name. Even the air seemed to hold its breath as Papa unwrapped the drum from its covering of sacred obi leaves. This, Papa said, his voice heavy with ceremony, is the Igba Eju, the drum of truth. From this day forward, it will guard our home against deception and restore peace to our family. The drum was placed on a spacious stool carved from Iroko wood, positioned where it could witness all that happened in the compound. As night fell, the family gathered around it, each person lost in their own thoughts, their own fears, their own secrets. The night no longer slept easily in the Okonkwo's compound. The drum's presence was like a silent judge waiting to speak its first words of truth. In the children's quarters, whispered conversation continued until dawn, as each child wondered whose secret would be the first to be revealed. Little did they know that the drum's first revelation would come sooner than any of them expected, and it would shake the family to its very foundation. The drum's first voice came with the morning dew, when the compound was still wrapped in the soft light of dawn. Mama had just discovered her new wrapper missing, a beautiful piece of Adire cloth sent from her sister in Abeokuta. As always, suspicious glances began to drift towards Chinua. But before the familiar pattern of accusations could begin, something extraordinary happened. The drum, sitting in its place of honor, began to vibrate. A sound emerged, not just a rhythm but a voice that seemed to come from the heart of the wood itself. In the shadows where truth hides its face, where blames falls like heavy rain. Look to Folami's sleeping place, where silk whispers speak her name. The compound fell silent. Even the morning birds seemed to hold their songs. Folami, the sixth child, began to tremble. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she rose and went to her sleeping mat, returning with the missing wrapper carefully folded in her arms. I just wanted to wear it to Adana's naming ceremony, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. I was going to return it before anyone noticed. The drum's revelation shook the family to its core, but it was only the beginning. Over the next 7 days, truth after truth emerged, each one peeling back layers of deception that had grown thick in the compound. The drum revealed how Obidna had been taking small amounts of palm wine from Papa's store, storing it in calabashes behind the yam barn. It showed how Chioma had broken Mama's favorite clay pot and blinked it on the wind. Even the little Olayinka Jr. was exposed for stealing dried fish from the kitchen rafters. Each revelation brought its own kind of pain, but also a strange relief. It was like treating a wound that cleaning hurt, but it was necessary for healing. The family learned that truth, though sometimes bitter, was less painful than the poison of suspicion and false blame. For Chinua, these days were a mixture of vindication and sorrow. While his own innocence was proven again and again, it hurt him to see his siblings face the shame of their exposed misdeeds. Yet, he also saw how each confession seemed to lift a weight from his family's shoulders. One evening, as the family sat together, sharing evening meal, Papa placed his hand on Chinua's shoulder, a gesture that spoke louder than words. Mama's eyes filled with tears as she served him an extra portion of his favorite soup, her way of asking for forgiveness. My son, his voice thick with emotions. The drum has taught us that age brings responsibility, but it should not bring blame. We have wronged you. We have deeply wronged you. News of the drum's power spread through Umuafia like wildfire. Neighbors began to appear at the compound's gates, some seeking justice, others fearing exposure. The drum's reputation grew with each passing day. Then came the morning when Chief Ezewudena himself appeared at their compound. The village's most powerful man stood before the drum, his authority momentarily set aside in the face of something greater. Olayinka, he said to Papa, our village is troubled. Theft have become like a plague. Trust has withered like crops in drought. We need the drum's wisdom. The chief called a grand assembly at the village square. Every family was required to attend, from the oldest elder to the youngest child. The drum was placed at the center, its presence commanding more attention than even the chief himself. As the sun climbed higher, the drum began to speak. Its revelation shook the village to its foundation. It spoke of how Okafor, the wealthy merchant, had been using juju to steal from market women's profit. It revealed how Namdi, the hunter, had been secretly selling the chief's livestock to traders from distant villages. But the drum's wisdom went deeper than mere accusations. It spoke of hunger that drove good people to steal, of poverty that turned neighbors against each other, of fear that made truth hide its face. The drum's revelations tested not just truth, but the very fabric of community. Some confessions brought anger, others brought understanding. The village learned that justice without mercy was like a knife that cut both ways. When young Adebayo confessed to stealing yams because his siblings were hungry, the village women took turns in bringing food to his compound. When old Babajide admitted to taking palm wine, they discovered he drank to forget the loss of his only son. The drum taught them that every theft had a story, every lie had a reason, and every truth had the power to either heal or harm, depending on how it was received. But the drum's power came with a price. Some truths were harder to bear than others. Friendship that had lasted generations were tested. Marriages faced new challenges as old secrets came to light. In the Okonkwo compound, they learned that truth was like a powerful medicine. It could heal, but the healing sometimes brought fever before health. Each family member had to face their own reflection in the mirror of truth, and not all liked what they saw. The drum showed them that truth was not just about right and wrong, but about understanding the human heart. It revealed how fear, shame, and need could twist even the straightest path. As the moon completed its circle, changes began to take root in both the compound and the village. The drum's presence became less fearsome and more like that of a wise elder guiding rather than condemning. In the Okonkwo family, new patterns emerged. The children learned to confess their mistakes before the drum needed to speak. Parents learned to listen before judging. Trust, once shattered, began to rebuild itself stronger than before because it was now founded on truth and understanding rather than assumptions and fear. But even as peace seemed to return, darker shadows were gathering at the edges of their world. For the drum's greatest test was yet to come, a challenge that would shake not just a family or a village, but the very foundation of truth itself. As the harvest season approached, a shadow fell over Umuafia, and even the brightest afternoon sun couldn't dispel. Strange things began happening in the village. The chief's prized white ram disappeared without a trace. The shrine's secret items vanished one by one. Even the ancient mask used for the highest ceremonies of the masquerade society was taken. These were no ordinary theft. These were crimes that struck at the heart of the village's spiritual life. The elders whispered that such act could bring the wrath of the gods upon them all. More disturbing still were the rumors that began to spread. Whispers of dark magic, of secret items being used in forbidden rituals, of a plot to undermine the very foundation of their community. One morning, The village awoke to find strange markings drawn in white chalk outside the Okonkwo compound. The signs were ancient and forbidding symbols that spoke of dark challenges to the drum's power. Papa called an emergency meeting with the village elders. As they gathered under the ancient Iroko tree, Baba Okafor, the eldest amongst them, spoke with trembling voice. These are marks of the Ekwensu society, those who deal in darkness and deception. They challenge the drums through with their own dark powers. The Babalawo who had given Papa the drum had warned of this possibility. Truth has its enemies, he had said, and they will strike when the truth threatens their power. The challenge came on a moonless night when the darkness was so thick it seemed to swallow even the stars. A group of figures wrapped in black raffia and wearing masks that seemed to absorb light entered the village square. Their leader, tall and imposing, carried a staff decorated with human bones. We challenge the drum's voice, the leader announced, his words seeming to freeze the very air. Our magic against its truth. If we win, the drum must be destroyed. If we lose, our secrets are yours. The entire village gathered, drawn by the beating of dark drums that seemed to come from the earth itself. The air crackled with spiritual power as the two forces prepared to clash. The contest began with a test of power. The Dark Society members performed feats that defied the natural law, turning walking sticks into snakes, causing fire to dance in patterns, making themselves appear and disappear like spirits. But when they tried to approach the drum, it began to speak with a voice that shook the earth. Children of the seed, wrapped in shadows, clock. Your past, born of midnight's darkest hour, cannot stand before the truth's brightest light. For lies, though strong, must bow to truth's power. As the drum spoke, each of the society members' masks began to crack, revealing faces known to the village. Faces of men and women they had trusted, who had used their positions to manipulate and deceive. The leader of the Dark Society revealed to be none other than the chief's own brother, fell to his knees. The drum's voice had broken their power, exposing not just their identities but the source of their dark magic. The drum revealed how they had been stealing secret items to create charms of deceptions, how they had used these powers to manipulate and control others, how they had walked in shadows to undermine the village unity. But even in these moments of exposure, the drum showed wisdom beyond mere justice. In darkness hearts they dwell, but light can transform, not just reveal. But truth's greatest power lies not in judgment cast, but in the chances for shadows to heal. The village faced a difficult decision. The crimes of the Dark Society members were serious, not just theft, but spiritual offenses that could anger the ancestors. Some called for the harshest punishment, for exiles or worse. But Chinua, who had known both false accusations and vindication, stepped forward. The drum taught our family that truth without mercy is like a knife that cuts both ways, he said. Perhaps he can teach our village the same. The drum began to beat a rhythm that everyone felt in their hearts, and the voice spoke for balance. Justice tempered by mercy, like rain that nourishes but does not flood, can transform those who walk in shadows into guardians of what is good. The village chose a path of transformation rather than pure punishment. The Dark Society members were required to confess all their deeds, return all stolen items, and spend 1 year in service to the shrine they had desecrated. But they were also given a path to redemption, a chance to use their knowledge for healing rather than harm. Each offender was paired with a respected elder who would guide them back to the path of light. The chief's brother, who had led the Dark Society, was appointed as the keeper of truth, tasked with using his experience of darkness to help others stay in the light. As the seasons turned, the drum's influence continued to grow, but in unexpected ways. It was no longer feared as just a revealer of secrets, but respected as teacher of wisdom. Families would bring their dispute before it, not to catch someone in a lie, but to understand the deeper truths that lay beneath their conflicts. In the Okunkwo compound, the drum became like another family member, one whose presence reminded them that truth was not just about facts, but about understanding and compassion. Chinua, once the accused, became known as a mediator, someone who could help others face their truth with courage. Years later, when Papa had grown old and his hair had turned white as morning mist, people would still come from far villages to seek the drum's wisdom. But its greatest lesson was not in its power to expose lies, but in what it taught about truth itself. For the drum showed them that truth was like a perfect yam. It had to be dug up carefully, cleaned gently, and shared wisely. It showed them that every person carried both light and shadow, and that the path to wisdom lay not in denying either, but in bringing them into balance. And so the legacy of the Igba Eju lived on, not just as a decorator of theft, but as a teacher of wisdom, a healer of hearts, and a reminder that in every community, the path to healing begins with facing the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. For in the end, it is not the drum's voice that brings change, but the courage of those who chose to listen and act upon its revelation with both justice and mercy in their hearts.
Please subscribe to watch more of our videos. Thank you.